This is my accounting system. When I was doing my taxes this year, I realized it would be nice to have a place to record business travel. So here's a short tutorial about how to add a new program to an existing accounting system. For this project, we're going to be adding a new data file to keep track of travel for claiming it as business expenses at the end of the year. The first thing to do when creating a new data file is to make a file layout. So to do that, we go to the fileio folder. This is the folder that fileio uses to keep track of all the files in our system. When I make a new file layout, I like to do it by duplicating an existing file layout and then modifying it. This shows me where everything goes and gives me a good idea, a good start for making the new layout. So first I'm going to select the customer data file and press Ctrl-C to copy it, and then Ctrl-V to paste it. This gives me a copy of the customer file layout. Now I'm going to give it a name. In this new system, I'm going to be keeping track of travel, so let's call the file travel. Now open it. I'm going to use EditPad, but you can use any text editor that you like. Now here we see all the details of the customer file because that's where we copied it from. So the first thing we're going to do is specify the file name. We'll call it travel.dat. And then our new data file will need a prefix. I'll use TR for travel. I like to keep it short because we're going to be typing it a lot. And since this is a new file, we'll start it at file version 1. In my accounting system, I keep track of each record in the accounting system by a unique auto-generated key, but other people's systems do it differently. In my system, I need to make a key and point it to the unique field, and then later we'll have to add the code to enter the unique field. So we'll call the key travel.key, and this first field, I'm going to call it ID instead of code. And so we'll say that the key is based on the ID field. After that, in the file layout, is the record length. You can specify that if your file already exists, but since this is a new file, I don't really care what the record length is. So I'm going to leave that out, and fileio will automatically calculate it for us. It'll just make sure that it's big enough to fit all of the fields that we have in our file. So now we have our ID field, and this will be called Travel Record ID. And it's a C4. That's just what I use in my system. Then what else? What are some of the things we're going to need to keep track of about travel that will be useful when filing our taxes at the end of the year? Well, I'll need the destination. And I'm going to make that a V64. We'll need a destination zip. A lot of people store zips in numeric fields. I store them in string fields other places in the system. It doesn't matter. You can do it however you like to do it. I'm just going to do it this way to make it match everything else. Now this will be the destination zip code, and that is a C5. And then I'm going to need the dates of the travel, so 2 dates, and they're numeric fields, so I don't put a $sign at the end of the subscript name. And for these dates, I'm going to use a BH3. Now the reason we use BH3s is because BH3 is a binary variable, numeric, exactly the right size to hold a Julian date. A Julian date records the number of days that have gone by since January 1st, 1900, which is useful because it allows us to easily perform date arithmetic. I would also like to include a notes field. I'm going to make it a large field so that I can type in fairly long notes. Then we save the layout. Now it's time to test it. The best way to test your file layout is by using fileio data crawler. If you're already running ScreenIO, you can launch the data crawler by selecting it from the File menu, like this. This will open a new window with fileio in it. You can see our ScreenIO window is still open. Type in the name of our new file layout, and it's highlighted automatically. Double-click on it to open it, or push View. Now fileio asks if we want to create it. This is a safeguard to keep us from accidentally creating files if we intended to open one instead. Click OK because we really are creating the data file. It shows another message saying the data file is empty. That's alright. The fact that we got this far means it was able to open and read our layout just fine. Click the Windows X to close out of fileio. Now it's time to create our new screen. Now that we have our file layout, let's create a couple programs to interact with the new file. We'll want a program to list all the travel records that we've entered, and we'll need a program to enter new travel. Lucky for us, for these two very common types of programs, ScreenIO has a wizard that will automatically create them for us. Then we can just fine-tune them when we're done, saving us a lot of time. So go to the Tools menu and select Generate Screen. Now select the layout. It'll be our new travel layout. And now ScreenIO asks what kind of screen we want to create. I prefer the style of two separate programs, so we'll need a list program and we'll need an add edit program. So we'll click Generate. First thing it does is ask us which fields to use for the list. Well, on the list I'd like to see the destination, perhaps the zip code, probably not the notes, there's not going to be room. We'll need the start and the end date. Now it asks us which fields to put on the Add Edit screen. Well, on the Add Edit screen, I want all of them except for the travel record ID. Now we hit Generate again. And ScreenIO has now opened two windows, and in one of them we've got our empty list screen. And in the other one, we've got a simple edit screen. The first thing I'm going to do is in my system for programs like this, which will pop up over the rest of the program, I like to give them a background color. So I click here to change the background color for the screen. And now I'd like it to be some kind of a green. And I think I want to go with a really dark green, so I'm going to choose something like that. Now, if we're using a dark background color, I'll want a bright foreground color, so I'm going to go with white. Now, the next thing I want to do is click on this list view and customize it a little bit. Let's see if we can make it look a little better than it does. So I click on it, and then I press Enter to switch through the different modes. This is where we could set a filter function if we want, and we just might do that in a little bit. And here is column editing mode. In column editing mode, I can do things like change the display width of the column. So I'm going to change this to 12 to make it a little narrower. And I can change the caption. This says destination zip, and it doesn't fit in the column heading, so I'm just going to change it to zip. And this one too, I'll just change it to start date. And here's end date. Now ScreenIO took all these values from our file layout when it automatically generated this screen for us. Now that I've made some changes, I want to see what this is going to look like. So I'll go ahead and hit Enter, and then hit Enter again to cycle through the different modes. Now we're back in here and it's redrawn our list view. Now it looks like maybe destination should be a little bigger, so go ahead and type 30 in here. That looks alright for now. These fields are Julian dates. Now ScreenIO has a lot of built-in tricks that help us when we're using Julian dates. In this case, I want to unpack the date and make it display as a human-readable date using the date function. So all I have to do is click on this column spec and type in date, open parenthesis, and then the date mask for how you want the date to display. I'd like to display it like this: month/day/century and year, and put an end parenthesis. Now, I actually want to take that same value, so I'm going to hit Control-C and copy it, and I want to put it here for the end date. So now, once we start entering data in our file, it'll show up here as a fancy human-readable date. I would also like to change the color of this search box to something that matches the background color a little better than white does. It's easy to experiment with different colors when you can see your changes immediately. Now also, we're not going to need the select button because I won't be selecting these records for anything else in my system. So I'm just going to select the button and push delete to get rid of it. I would like to change the caption of cancel to quit. And now under File, we choose Save and Compile, and save our screen. Now let's take a look at the Travel Edit screen. Well, first of all, I'm going to need some more room. So I'd like to go up to the top left here and change rows to, I don't know, 18. Now let's give it a brighter color, a green similar to the green we used before, but a couple shades brighter. Now I select these two buttons Control S is the way to toggle selection mode on something, so you click on each thing and then push Control S. They turn green to show that they're both selected. Now I can move them around together using the mouse or the arrow keys. I want to put them down there. Now I want to take notes and move it down to here. I'm going to press Escape to unselect all the things that we have selected. Now, just sitting in the Notes field, I'd like to press Page Down to turn that into a multi-line field. Also, it looks way wider. I don't really need it to be that wide. In fact, the whole screen is a bit wide, so backspace is the key to make something less wide. Let's do it up here too, backspace. Spacebar makes things more wide. Now, again, we're going to want to move both these buttons together. And let's take this and shrink it a little bit. And now let's make the whole screen a little less wide. We do that by modifying the columns in the upper left. So we'll try 45. Oh, that's too small. The fields don't all fit on the screen. You can see errors in the to-do section down here. So let's try 50. Each time I just press enter and it tries it. Oh, that's pretty close, but I'd say a little wider. 52. Now let's do a test run. We can test our program by going to the File menu and choosing Save and Test. This will save, compile your program, and then run it. When you run a ScreenIO add edit screen, and you don't give it a key for a specific record to edit, it assumes that you're trying to add a record. So we're seeing our new screen here, already running, in add mode. Let's enter a destination. Now the tab key, it put me in notes, it skipped over the dates. I don't like that, but we'll address it in a minute. Now these dates are showing up as just a number. So this is a Julian date field. Now I don't know how many days it's been since January 1st, 1900. I want to be able to enter that date in a familiar way, a way that makes sense to me. So we're going to have to tell ScreenIO that it's a date field. Anyway, let's just save this and see if it works. Looks like it saved it and it exited. Well, let's fix a couple of those issues. The tab order can be fixed like this. Just click on the Set Tab Order button, and then click through the fields in the order that you want the cursor to go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all saved when you click on the fifth one. Now let's look at our date fields. Come down here to the conversion spec and type in the same thing we typed in before. Date, CCYY. Date, CCYY. And we make sure our data width is big enough to handle that, and it's 10, which is big enough, /DD/CCYY. Now let's try it again. Save it and test. Here's our new program. Now it tabs into our date field and we can see that they're dates. I'll enter a date. In ScreenIO, if you just enter a month and a day, it'll figure that you mean this year. You want to say a different year, you can enter the complete date. You can use any delimiter you want, /, dot, comma, dash, whatever's convenient. Another thing you can do is say 30 days from now by typing +30. Or 15 days ago by typing -15. Or of course you can type +0 to get today. So let's say 60 days from now. Notes about why it's a business trip. And now I click save, and again it saved it. And it didn't give any errors. So now let's switch back to our list view screen and try both programs running together. Save and test. Now we have our two records in here. Let's click Cancun and try to edit it. Yeah, we edited it. Let's give it a start date of 35 days from now and an end date of 60 days later. I'd like to make a couple of other changes to clean this program up and make it look even nicer. First, I'm going to switch back to our Add Edit screen. And I'd like to take the dates and move them over here. Get rid of that caption, or change that caption really, to a dash. Shrink it. Position it. And take a look. Let's move it over to the left a little. And now try. Too far. I like that. We'll save it. And then test it by testing our other screen. Now we can add a new entry. And everything seems to be working just fine. Let's add another one. And let's test our delete button. Oh, there seems to be a problem with the delete button. Let's see what it is. To find out what error 62 means, we can check the BR Wiki by going to www.brwiki.com. In the search box, type the error number as a 4-digit code, 0062. So error 62 means that we're trying to delete a record when the record isn't locked. So apparently there's a bug in our delete list view record routine. We don't want to fix the problem here, we want to fix it in the actual function that is being compiled into this. So to look at the function that happens whenever they click the delete button, let's open up this button. When ScreenIO automatically builds your screen, it doesn't have access to any magic tricks that you can't do yourself. When it adds a button to the screen, for example, it's just adding a button, filling in these details, and selecting this function. Now we can click edit to edit the actual code of that function. It's going to open it in your default editor that is associated with BRS files. In my case, it's myedit. Here's the function right here. I think what we want to say is alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to read the file, and we're going to read using rec equals current rec. Now current rec is going to be the record that is selected in the list view. That's a ScreenIO system variable. This will just read the current record and lock that record, and then when we try to delete it, we should delete it just fine. If file equals 0 means if the last file operation completed successfully. So if we successfully read a record, then we delete it. And then this line, of course, redraws the list view so that the end user will see that the record has been deleted. Now we save it. Choose save and compile and test. And now let's try it again. Perfect. In my accounting system, it keeps track of all the customers that I do work for. So I would like to be able to mark a customer on a travel record saying that that customer was the purpose of traveling to that city. So the first thing I need to do is make a place in the file layout to store which customer a travel record is for. So I'm going to open the customer file layout, and we already have the travel file layout open. So in customer I can see that there's a customer code, and it's a 4-digit unique identifier for that customer. So here under travel, I'm going to add customer. And this field is a C4 because it'll store the 4-character ID of a customer record. The last thing we need to do is increase the file layout version number. So now this is version 2 of the layout. This will tell FileIO that the file layout has changed and to update the data file automatically to the new version, making room for a customer. Because fileio has this feature, it's not even necessary to add fields at the end. We could add them wherever we want. In this case, it makes sense to put the customer right after the destination information. The best way to test our new layout is to use fileio's data crawler. So, we still have ScreenIO open, we can launch it like that. And now, type in travel, view the file layout, and it tries to update it to the new version. Yes, we want it to create the new version of the file. And here it is, and our data is still all there, all of our records. And we can see that there's now room for customer. Now that we have updated our layout and have it working, it's time to add a customer drop-down to the Add Edit screen for a travel record. So here we are. And the first thing I need to do is refresh the file layout. So I'm going to save our screen and then press Ctrl-A, clear proc, and run, and reload our screen. Travel Edit, and here it is. And now we see the new customer field. Select it, and then push Enter, and it adds visiting customer to the screen. However, I would like it to be a drop-down. First, however, let's make some room. Now, let's change it into a drop-down, a combo box. So, to do that, we go to Control, change control type. Now you can see our customer field is already selected, and we just need to choose a control type. So down here in the toolbox, I'm going to choose combo box, and you'll see type is combo. Now we click convert, and our field is now changed instantly into a combo box. Now that it's a combo box, we need to write a function to populate the combo box and to validate the selection. If you write your own function, you basically do anything you want to the array called return data, and whatever you put in return data will be placed inside the combo box. However, in my system, I already have functions that work for most common situations. To select a pre-existing function, we click Edit, and the one we want is called Populate, and select this. There's also Populate Combo Yes No. Here's a very good simple example for how to set whatever you want in a combo box. In Populate and select this, we take the control name of the field and we look for a data file with the same name. So all I have to do is set the field control name to be customer and delete this because we're not directly displaying the field. And populate and select this will do all the rest of it. It will look for a file named customer, which is exactly what we want, and it'll find the description, and it'll show the description here in the drop-down and allow the user to select a customer from that drop-down. And whatever they select will be saved in the data file according to its 4-digit code. You can write a similar function for your system that you can use to easily make combo boxes anywhere. So I want to make sure this is big enough to show all the customer names. In our customer file layout, the names can be up to 30 characters. And I want to allow the end user to only select from the options in the drop-down. I don't want him to be able to type in a new customer here because it wouldn't actually add a customer to the file. Now I'm going to use the spacebar to make this combo box a little wider so that we can see the whole customer name. And we're going to save and test this. And here are all the customers. Now while we're on this screen, there's another little thing that I'd like to do that I think will make it look a little nicer. I want to change the background of all these text boxes to be a green. Now, first of all, I'm going to click in one of the fields, and then I'm going to press Ctrl-T to select all text boxes. And then I'm going to select the combo box too. And now I'm going to open it up. And we're going to give it a background color. We'll make it slightly blue. You can choose whatever color looks good in your accounting system. Now, ScreenIO asks us, would you like to copy the changes to all selected controls? So we choose yes. And they're all blue. Now let's switch to our list view and test it again. Now let's look back at one and see if it was saved correctly. Oh, it doesn't look like it's being read correctly. That's because we never gave ScreenIO any instructions to read it. So, it's time we set our read and our initialize events. The read event is a function that runs anytime ScreenIO is reading an existing record. So we click edit and then we type in a name for our new function. This is going to be read travel record. Then I'm going to click new and yes. And you type a short description. And when this function is called by ScreenIO, matf $, matf contain the customer record. And from looking at our file layout, we can access any of these fields by saying tr underscore and the field name. So the customer code is tr underscore customer. That's the customer code. Now what I want to do is populate the customer field on the screen with the name of the actual customer from the customer file. Any of your fields on your screen that are not specifically tied to the data file go into a special array called matS. matS $ is an array that you can use to modify additional extra fields on the screen, like the way that our customer combo box works in this example. So to access them, I use the prefix SIO, and then I give the control name, in this case customer. So we want to let SIO customer equal, and now we want to unpack this. fileio has a very convenient function called fn read unopened description. You can read the fileio documentation online on the BR Wiki at www.brwiki.com and then type fileio in the search box. The table of contents gives a convenient way to jump around in the documentation. Here we see fn read unopened description. The fn read unopened description function takes a layout, a key, and a field. It reads that record and that field and returns it. So in our function, we want to give the layout, customer, and the key, f $ customer. And looking at our customer layout, the second field is the one we want to return, so we don't need to give the optional third parameter. So that's it. That's all we need for our read function. Now, let's save and compile. And let's test again. And it successfully read the record. If we test adding a record, the visiting customer field always comes up with this caption underscore customer. I wonder why that is. Oh, it's because the caption field came from the original setup, and caption field is applied differently in combo boxes. And now we no longer have the problem. It comes up blank like it should. Now that we have customer in our travel records, we should add customer to this list view. So first, we click on the list view, and then click the Add Column button, and now click in our new column, and we want to call this field, this is control name, this is what we're going to use to reference the field in code. So we want to call this customer. The field name will be blank because it won't be read from the file automatically. It'll be unpacked by our function. And the caption will be customer. The data width will be 30 because that's how wide our customer names can be. And let's make the field a little wider, try 15. Now I push enter to cycle through the different modes. And we can see our list view is a little too wide, so let's make one of these other fields shorter. Let's try making this one down to 25. Almost. Let's go a little further. 22. 20. Now I'd like to customer over by destination. So I use control left arrow and control right arrow to move it around. Now we need to write a filter function to fill in the customer. When you write a filter function, you can do anything you want to the record while it's being unpacked and on its way to the list view. You can color it, you can change any of the values in it, and you can also suppress it so that if you want your list to show only certain records, you can easily do that here. So click Edit, type in a name for our new filter function. We'll call it filter travel. And then click New. And yes. And it'll open in MyEdit. Now again here, we kind of want to say the same thing. Alright, so we save our function. Come back to our list view and save and test it. And it shows no records. This is because the filter function also filters the list view. So I also need to return true so that ScreenIO knows that I want to include all the records on the list. Save it. Save and test it again. Let's delete this record. And it seems to be working pretty well. So now, let's take a look at the programs that we've just created. If you list the program that we're running right now, this is the program that we run when we choose Test from the ScreenIO menu. Right in the beginning of the program, it establishes the library linkage to ScreenIO and then calls the screen that is itself. If the screen returns anything, it prints it to help you with debugging. If you click the X, then it exits BR. Otherwise, it just stops so that you can see what happened and investigate. So whenever we run our screen and I click the quit button, it returns you to the command console here so that you could see the return value. This means a couple of things. First of all, this gives you a very easy, convenient way to call your new program from your existing menu. All you have to do is put in a command in your menu program, such as chain program name /ScreenIO, and it will load it and run it. Or you could do it like this. But another way you can run your screen, if we look at the beginning here, is to establish your own library linkage to FNFM and call your screen from it. And that way you can call your screen from any program you want and then return and just keep doing whatever you were already doing in your program. In my accounting system, I have a bunch of tabs that do most of the important tasks for keeping up with my business. Each of these tabs have a drop-down menu with options I can use to run secondary programs, or programs that provide for background data, such as this one to change the company master information. I would like to add travel here to this menu. One way that we can find where the code is that modifies this menu is to use the power search feature. I go to Tools, Power Search, and type in something exactly as I see it on the menu. For example, back office. This searches the entire system and finds that the string back office appears here in Tab Windows menu. We can push Launch and it will let us look at this code. This is a standard function that runs in all of my main tabs that displays the Windows menu. At the top, you see a pretty standard way to define a business rules drop-down menu. Down here is the code that automatically reads it and sizes the arrays properly and displays it on the screen. And down here is the code that runs it. We check and see what the trigger value was of the menu item selected. And there are a couple of special cases, and after that, if it's not one of the special cases, we simply run it in ScreenIO. Well, this is perfect because our new travel list is already a ScreenIO screen. So, all I want to do is come up here, add a new line, and the name of the screen to call, and then we'll make it type E, so that it executes this code when the user clicks on it. So I'm going to search for all the places in ScreenIO where this code is called. Looks like it's also called from each of these functions. So now I'm going to highlight all of them and click Affected Screens, and these are all the screens in my system that use this function. Now I select them all and hit Recompile Screen, and ScreenIO recompiles these screens for me. And now they've all been updated to use the new version of my menu function. which now has the travel system on it. Let's test it from within my system. And here's travel, and here's our new program, showing up right within and fully integrated into my accounting system. And there's our new record. And there's our new program integrated completely into my accounting system. At this point, it seems like our new program is working pretty well. But there's one detail that I know that we've forgotten to tie up. If we take a look at the raw data in the data file using fileio's data crawler, we can see that the travel record ID is not being populated. The program still works fine without it, but that ID is pretty important in my system. For example, we were able to add a customer to a travel record because customer file had that ID and it was properly filled in. In the future, I might want to add travel records to something else in the system, in which case I'll need the ID to be populated for each record so that the rest of my system can keep track of it. To initialize a new record on add, we do it by specifying an initialize function. This is just like the read function, except the read function is run by ScreenIO whenever a record is being read. In the event that you're adding a new record, the read function is never called. The initialize function is only run when you're adding a new record, and it's not called during read. So read is the ideal place to unpack data, like for example taking our customer code and looking it up in the customer file. Initialize is the ideal place to specify what needs to go into a new record that you're creating. So we click Edit next to Initialize and type in a name for our new initialize function. Then we click New, and my edit is opened up to edit the new function. So first we want to type in a description of our function. Now when ScreenIO calls our initialize function, it's going to give us the two arrays, matf$ and matf, that contain the data from the record on disk that we're adding. And in order to initialize values in the record, we just need to set those values in these two arrays. If we take a look at our travel file layout, we can see that the prefix is tr and the ID field is ID. So what we want to do here is set our $tr ID to something. In our case, we want to set it to a uniquely identifying key field that hasn't been used yet in the travel file. Luckily, fileio has a function that does exactly that. You give it a file number, and it figures out what the key is, and it finds a new value that hasn't been used as a key before. All we have to do is pass the file number into the function, and we get back our key. Now in ScreenIO, the file number for the currently open file is always stored in the ScreenIO system variable data file. So we just specify data file here, and the function will read that file, generate our unique key, and then we'll save it in $of tr ID. This is also the place where you can initialize any other values you might want to initialize on your screen. For example, I think it would be nice to initialize our travel dates to about 2 weeks in the future. So to do that, we simply need to specify their values in matf. So let f tr start date, and we can verify that by looking here. So the prefix is tr, and the field is start date, and the other field we'll want to set is end date. Now those are Julian date fields, and in BR the way you get a Julian date field is by using the days function. So we want to say the days of today plus 14. So we'll initialize our travel to be 14 days out from the day that it's being entered. And we'll set the end date to 1 week later. Now these are just providing the default values that the user can change when entering travel records. Now we save our function, and we save and compile our screen, and now we test it from within the Sage Live system. Now, when we add a new travel record, we can see that the dates are already entered for us. Now let's take a look inside the files using fileio's data crawler. And we can see that our two newly added records have unique keys entered for us. One other useful feature of the data crawler is the ability to look inside your data files and change things if you need to. This helps us to fix errors that happen during debugging. Several of these travel records were entered before we added the feature to initialize the travel ID. So let's use the data crawler to go in and specify the travel IDs for those existing records. To edit a record in fileio, you use the secret key F5. This opens up the data file in a grid that you can then change. Now we can see that our unique keys in Sage Life System are just a number that starts at 0 and increases. So we can go ahead and enter that by hand for the rest of these. In our system, it doesn't matter what they are as long as they're unique. Now we hit save. Click back to the main menu. And now in the future, if we needed to add any of these records to some other data file, we'll be able to because their unique keys are already set.